An experienced merchant used to travel to distant cities and stormy seas. One day, while he was on a journey, he took out a piece of bread and a few dates from his bag to eat and threw the date seeds away. At that moment, a demon appeared with a sword and said, "When you threw the date seed, it hits my son," and he instantly died. "Now I will kill you in revenge." The merchant said, "Oh, great demon, I have several sons. Now that you intend to kill me, give me some time to return home and make a will, and I will come to you after 1 year." The demon accepted his request. The merchant returned home, made his will, and told his children about the incident that had happened with the demon. When the year came to an end, he returned to the same desert and sat at the foot of the tree crying for his fate. An old man arrived. He had a deer accompanying him. The old man greeted the merchant and asked, "Who are you and why are you alone in the presence of the great demon?" The merchant explained the story. The first old man was surprised and saddened, saying, "You cannot escape this danger, so I will sit by your side and see what will happen to you in the end." The merchant cried, and then another old man arrived with 2 black dogs. He greeted them and asked why they were sitting there. They were told the story. Before the second old man could sit down, another old man riding a cart arrived. He greeted them and asked why they were sitting there. They explained it to him as well. Suddenly, the ground shook and the same demon with a sword appeared. The merchant cried, and the 3 old men also cried for his fate. The first old man, who had the deer with him, stood up, kissed the demon's hand and said, "Oh, Prince of Demons, I have a story for you." The story of the old man and the deer. The old man said, "This deer is my cousin's daughter, and she was married to me for 30 years without having any children. I took a maidservant and she gave birth to a son. When the son turned 15, I went on a trip. Due to my business, I traveled to another city, and my cousin's daughter, who is this deer, had learned sorcery as a child. So she turned maidservant and my son into a cow and a calf with magic and gave them to the shepherd. After a while, when I returned from my trip, I asked about the maidservant and my son. She said, the maidservant ran away with the son. I was upset by this news and mourned for a year until it was Eid. I asked the shepherd to bring me a fat cow for sacrifice. The shepherd brought a fat cow that was my maidservant. I prepared myself and took a knife to sacrifice her. The cow moaned and cried, and I couldn't kill her myself, so I told the shepherd to kill her. I saw bones without any flesh. I regretted killing her, but my regret had no benefits. So I gave her to the shepherd and told him to bring me another calf. The shepherd brought a calf that was my son. When the calf saw me, he hurried towards me. He fell on the ground and cried a lot. My heart was filled with mercy, so I told the shepherd to let him go. This deer, who is my cousin's daughter, stood beside me and looked at me and saying, "Kill this calf, for it is fat." But I didn't do this. I gave him to the shepherd. The next day, the shepherd came to me and gave me good news, saying, "I have a daughter who learned sorcery from an old wizard when she was young. When I brought the calf home, she covered herself and cried a lot. Then she laughed and said, 'Father, why did you bring a stranger into our house?' I asked, 'Which stranger are you talking about? And why did you laugh and cry?' She said, 'This calf is the son of a merchant whose wife turned him and his mother into a cow and a calf with magic. That's why I laughed, but I cried because his mother was killed by his father. Oh, great demon. When I heard these words from the shepherd, I was very happy and went to the shepherd's house. The shepherd's daughter greeted me, kissed my hand, and stood by my side. After that, the same calf came and threw itself on the ground. I asked the shepherd's daughter, "Is what your father said about this calf true?" She said, "Yes, this is your son." I said, "If you turn him into a human, I will give you a lot of wealth so that you can be independent." The girl smiled and said, "I don't want wealth, but promise me that if I turn him into a human, you will allow us to get married, and I will turn your wife into an animal so that he will be safe from harm." I agreed. So she filled a bowl with water and recited a prayer over it, then sprinkled it on the calf. At that moment, the calf turned into a human. I embraced him, kissed his eyes, and married him to the shepherd's daughter. She in turn turned my wife into a deer with magic. This deer is the same one. I take it with me everywhere I go. Demon said it was an interesting story. At that moment, the second old man, the owner of 2 dogs, came and said, "Oh, great demon, these 2 dogs were my brothers. When my father passed away, he left 3,000 dinar as inheritance. I had a shop and my other brother went on a journey. After a year, he returned poor. I took him to the shop and gave him 1,000 dinars. We were together for a few days. After that, both of my brothers wanted to go on a journey and asked me to accompany them. I didn't go on this trip. I also asked them not to go so they wouldn't suffer any financial loss, and they didn't go. 6 years passed and each of us had a shop. We decided to go on a journey together, so we counted all our belongings and it amounted to 6,000 dinars. I said, let's bury half of this amount underground so that if we become penniless, we will have some money. And let's take the other half for trading. They agreed, and exactly as I suggested, we did it. We went on a journey by ship. It took us a month to reach the city. We sold our goods with high profits. After that, we traveled towards the sea. We saw a girl there who was wearing old clothes, and she said to me, "Can you do me a favor so that you can see the reward for your good deed?" I said, "Yes, I will do whatever you ask." She said, "Marry me and take me to your city." I did exactly that. I brought her onto the ship, gave her expensive clothes, and fell in love with her. I was constantly with her day and night. My brothers became jealous and conspired to kill me and divide my wealth among themselves. When we were sleeping with that girl, they threw us into the sea. At that moment, the girl turned into an elf and took me away to an island and hid from me for an hour. After that, she came in front of me and said, "I am a believer in the prophet of God, and I turned into a human form because I loved you. And know that I will kill your brothers for their deeds." I was surprised and did not allow her to kill my brothers. I swore to her and said, "They are still my brothers after all." After that, she took me and we went up to the sky, and soon I was placed back in my house. I opened the door and took the 3,000 dinars that we had buried and waited in the shop. When night fell, I saw these 2 dogs. They came close to me crying. Suddenly, the girl came and said, "These are your brothers, and they will remain as dogs for 10 years. So I took these 2 dogs with me everywhere until these 10 years passed and they could be human. When the old man finished his story, Demon said, "It was a good story. I was captivated by it." When the second story was finished, The third old man said to Demon, I also have a better story than the previous two. Allow me to tell it. If you enjoy the story, spare this man's life. Demon replied, Tell me. The old man began, Oh, great demon, this horse was my wife. I had a journey ahead of me. I traveled to cities for a year. When I returned home after a year, I saw my wife betrayed me with a strange man. My wife chanted a magical spell and poured water on me. At that moment, I transformed into a dog and was kicked out of the house. I became hungry and went to a butcher shop where I ate a bone. When the butcher was going home, I followed him. When we arrived at his house, his daughter saw me and exclaimed, Father, why did you bring a stranger into our house? The butcher asked, Which stranger? The daughter replied, This dog is the man that his wife turned into him through magic, and I can turn him back into a human. The butcher asked his daughter to do so. The daughter chanted a prayer over a jug of water and poured it on me. I transformed back into a human and kissed the daughter's hands and feet, asking her to turn my wife back into a horse. She gave me a little of that water and said, When your wife is asleep, pour this water on her. The same thing will happen. I did the same thing, and she instantly transformed into a horse. And this horse is her. Demon was amazed by this story and asked if it was true. The horse nodded, indicating yes. Demon was greatly astonished and pardoned the merchant, setting him free.